Good morning, all. Good morning to everyone. Happy Figure It Out Friday, our first Figure It Out Friday of 2025. Put a one in the chat for the first one. Just put a one in the chat because it is the first Figure It Out Friday. Latrice, you do not text me this morning. You did not text me this morning, Latrice. I'm on you. I'm on you, white on rice over here. You didn't text me this morning. Yeah, she's laughing. She knows. She's my 4:30 girl. Did not get that text in this morning, but I was on it. Jada texted me. Jada was out there texting me. Good morning. Look at this. Look at this. F3 right here. You got to put that on here today for this big special show that we got going on here. First Figured Out Friday. Guys, if you don't mind, before I get into Figured Out Friday, I just want to tell you what I've been figuring out since about an hour and a half ago. For those that know and don't know, I'm divorced. Got two kids, two young kids, and it is officially for how it works is I technically don't get the kids till about 3:30, 4 o'clock. Well, guess what, all? We have a snowstorm. Okay. First of all, the snowstorm's not even gonna start until like 3. But you know what? Let's shut it down. Shut it down, everybody. Don't even try to go out here in Charlotte. And so I went to the grocery store. I was trying to figure out something to eat because I was like, all right, everything else can be. Let me just tell you all, carrots, celery, and chicken is now on the list that if you have a snowstorm, John, it's like it's wiped out clean. It's wiped out clean. So the first time in a long time, we're going organic. We're going organic this time for this chicken noodle soup, a little organic. Because guess what? Everybody thinks organic's great, but guess what? Those were the only things left on the shelf was the organic stuff. So when snowstorms come, organic stuff stays. Okay, that's what I've learned on my shopping. The other thing I learned, ex-wife, lover, could you watch the kids? Could you help me watch the kids today, please? So now my whole day, and she says this in such a nice way, and I can say it because we have a good relationship. I was like, well, I have this appointment. I got to do this. And I'm like, all right, I'll try to figure it out. Right. So I say to her, I give her another time. Well, that's not going to work. I said, to her, I text her back, John. I go, then why don't you just tell me you're going to drop? Don't ask me what time the kids are coming over. Don't ask me. Just tell me I'm dropping them off at this time because there's really no option. But I never say no to the kids. I never fight it because those that have children that are of age, like much older, I have learned this that I've not been able to figure out how to make them young again. So when they are young, you have to just run with it, roll with it, because one day I will wish that they're going to be dropped off on a snow day for us to go sled riding, for us to be able, we're supposed to get 3 to 5 inches of snow, and I'm going to wish that they were home with me. So that is literally how I figured out that no matter what's going on in my life, you just make it work. You make it happen. So for those of you who are trying to figure it out today, welcome to the Figure It Out Friday show, our first one of the year. I'm really excited. This was a person that Jada sent over to us. So if you have somebody, John does a really good job. If you have somebody, Michelle does a good job. I'm going through my names of who I see here on the screen. If you know somebody that has an amazing story, send it to us. We want to have a conversation with them because today we're going to listen to Sammy and his story that he has and what he's gone through. Because there's figured out moments all I've learned in the AA rooms when I thought I was alone. There's many people going through the same thing. They actually even have it worse. They even have it more challenging than I thought I had it. And it gives you a different perspective. My dad and I talked many times because of his health. And I say, Dad, there's people in hospital beds. I think, Jada, you and I talked about this. He was bitching about something. I said, Jada, there's somebody right now who has cancer who's lying in a hospital bed wishing to be able to have what your problem is. So it's all perspective of what it is. And so when people share their story and their emotions and their what they figured out, I want you all to recognize that these are some challenging, like these go deep. Okay. This is something that they share that really is either painful, but it also brought them promise. It also brought them something to help you. So hopefully today, something triggers into you that not only do you get to, Sammy's story helps you, but maybe you can help somebody else out on this Figured Out Friday. So let us get ourselves started here on this Figured Out Friday. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Put good morning into the chat. Put it into the chat because I like to read the chats, and Chad Free texts me later and says, hey, why don't you say this in the chat? He doesn't, but I just always like to say that. So say good morning into the chat and tell us if you're going to have snow. Tell us if you're going to have snow. Texas had some snow. I don't know if Michelle was part of it, but Texas had snow. I saw that. My buddy James Sharp, um, he was showing something he has snow, but we're expected 3 to 5 inches here in the Charlotte, Northern Chart area. So we're expected that. So we're excited. So tell us if you're expecting snow today. My name is Coach Brock Zevan. I'm a life coach, business coach, real estate agent, and a DAD. And it is a DAD weekend, as you all know, with me and snow and fun. I got the tubes ready. The snow tubes are all ready to rock and roll. But today's Figured Out Friday is a guest that I shared with you from Jada. And Jada brought Sammy to our stage. And I asked Jada to introduce Sammy. I asked Jada to share a little bit about what triggered you, because when you hear people's stories, just like when I hear people's stories, there's certain people I'm going to bring back on to our Figured Out Friday who spoke maybe a year ago and they had a shitstorm happen to them. I'm like, damn, okay, you need to come back on because boy, you've had a really tough year, buddy. And he's, made it to the other side of it. But Jada, what I would love for you to do, brother, is I'd like you to introduce us to Sammy here and tell us what triggered you. And then Sammy, we're going to bring you on stage here. So Jada, tell us a little bit about what triggered you when you heard Sammy and how that all went down.
Good morning, y'all. So Sammy and I connected through a mutual friend, and it was through my F3 brand and his sports app that is really cool. I'm pretty sure he's going to talk about. But we linked up. Sammy came to my house. We had a meeting for over an hour and a half, but we just didn't talk about the business. We actually got to know each other and click. So Sammy told me where he's from and just his story, man. His whole story just getting to here in Greenville, South Carolina was amazing to me. Just from, and I'll let him talk more about it, but just from him going from Guam to the Philippines, it was crazy, man. And the reason why. And, like I say, Sammy's a cool guy. Sammy is about helping people. He's about connecting. And I'm just so blessed and honored just to be able to know Sammy and have him on your show.
Well, Jada, I appreciate you bringing it. And the Philippines, I'm actually getting ready to go to the Philippines because I'm going to go see my VA team. And this is the first I've been with them for Jay specifically for over 2 years, and now get to meet them. We got a nice little place picked out where we're going and spending some time together. But Sammy, a lot of my VAs, I have 5 VAs that work in the Philippines, and so it has become a really amazing story for me on the Philippines and meeting them, and they are like my family. And so with that, Sammy, welcome, brother. Good morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you and Brock, and thanks for having me on the show. Jada, it's
Man,
always good seeing you, my man. F3 all the way.
F3, F3. And
Yeah.
focus is actually my word for 2025. So Jada has not sent me an invoice on that yet. I'm just waiting, but I have taken focus for my word of 2025. And so, Sammy, as we get into today, tell me a little bit, give me a 30-second overview of, we see that you're from Greenville, South Carolina, from what Jada shared. But tell us a little bit, a quick little backdrop of, who you are and where you, a little bit of your story from, what you do today before we get into our figured out moments.
Sure, I appreciate that. Again, thanks for having me on. I'm just a guy trying to figure things out, Brock.
Yeah.
I was talking to Jada last night and asking about the premise of things and how relatable it is to my personal story. I'm just a guy that's been through a few things and wants to help out who I can and who wants to listen. But I'm 54 years old. I was born in the Philippines, moved to California when I was 3. So I grew up and then moved to the Philippines, got married, and a few years later moved to Guam and spent 20 years raising a family there. And my wife, unfortunately, had gotten sick. She had scleroderma. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a cousin of lupus. She was battling
Oh,
that for 14 years in Guam.
wow.
And it was a tough time. But there was a point in 2020 when we had to relocate her to the Philippines for more support. She was bedridden at that point, and unfortunately, 2020 was during COVID, and it was just a perfect worst storm of our life when we lost her during that time, COVID,
Mm.
and the country shut down. By that time, my sons were here in Greenville, and they couldn't even come back to be with me during that time. Um, yeah, and so there's a lot that goes
Isn't
into
that tough?
but
I had these, my grandmother passed and we weren't able to see her. And that's my grandmother. Like I couldn't even imagine not seeing my mom, not seeing like to that support. I can only imagine this wasn't, I mean, this was like 5 years ago. This wasn't a very long time ago.
yeah, it was tough. I mean, I moved her there from Guam to the Philippines in February 2020. I had a corporate job in Guam. And so the country shut down in March, which was the following month, and I couldn't go back. But God is good. He kept me in the Philippines for a purpose because she passed away in April, the following month after that. And
Mm.
being married for 24 years, I had the blessing to be by her side till the last breath. It's true, till death do you part, and that's what happened. The only thing missing was just being apart from my two sons who were in Greenville who just couldn't come. I mean, I tried to get the government or the airlines to try to make an exception to bring them in, to be with me at the time, but obviously it was just the country shut down for 10 months. And so it was a year after she passed that they had been able to come with me to bring her to her final resting place about a year later.
Wow. So if you don't mind, if I just dive a little bit deeper into that,
Yeah.
because I mean, death is very challenging, especially when, COVID, you're alone. I think alone all is probably one of the most scariest things, at least for me, is just being alone. Like and COVID really brought that. And we're seeing it more and more, and I see it a lot with kids because my kids are young, like the education system and where they were, like they were secluded. And so how did you deal with that? How was your mindset? And then the recovery after that of being like getting back on that horse. If you don't mind kind of like sharing that process a little bit of what that was and how you figured it out, because you are alone. I mean, you can go to YouTube and you can Zoom people, but that there's that love, that embracement. That's why I would say Zoom is very hard. I think really, really good speakers, if you can master Zoom, you can master any room because Zoom is just so hard to connect. Like you have to be like in it and passionate. So like when you're alone and you're going through that with your wife and I don't know if you're sleeping at the hospital, if you got to go back home alone, like you're not, and it wasn't a day. Like this was over and over and over. And then the period of the burial and then getting back on that horse. If you don't mind just kind of sharing us that mindset and how you figured out to be where you are today. I mean, you spoke that very well. I mean, I was getting emotional and I was reading some of the text here. I was like, damn, his wife died. Like, talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, if I may, her name was Justina Sotelo,
Mm.
and she's the most wonderful person that has ever graced this earth. I tell you what, she is the most God-fearing woman and an inspiration, and honestly, the nucleus of our family. I have two grown boys, Kaipo and Kobe, and their mom was just that role in our lives that just brought us together and closer to God. You asked, how do you stay strong? It was through her strength, Brock.
Mm.
No doubt. I mean, who am I to complain? She
Mm.
didn't complain,
Amen.
you know? She was battling it for 14 years, and the 80% of that time it was relatively normal. She was, getting weak. When you deal with something like this, scleroderma is an autoimmune disease that turns your body to stone, basically, is kind of what it does. It scars your insides, your skin gets tight, you lose weight. I mean, when I met her, she was walking around at maybe 115, 118. By the time she passed, she was below 90 pounds. I mean, it was skin and bones at that point. But to answer your question, it's her strength, um, and the embrace of God throughout the whole thing. And of course, my two sons. That's why I'm living today. I mean, these guys, you mentioned earlier on, you know, you want your kids you always think about how things were back then raising kids, but my personal story is I feel younger as I get older because my sons
Hmm.
have taken that role now, right? So I'm kind of like the guy that needs them now. And I'm not afraid to admit it because I'm super proud of them. They're very well-rounded in their careers, and they're both married. They're both own their own homes, and they're showing true leadership qualities as men. So um, I think our foundation as a family between Tina and I, that was the most important thing. I mean, she was a registered nurse in the Philippines, and she never practiced nursing in the hospital one day. Her passion in life was her family, was her kids. As a matter of fact, when Kaipo turned 3 years old in the Philippines, it was about that time to go to nursery. Instead of her going to work, she started a preschool in the Philippines, just so that she can be with him. And so she went around the whole neighborhood in the Philippines and recruited all these. She started a class with like 12 kids. She went knocking on doors to bring in kids so she could start a nursery so she can be with her kid. And that grew and grew and grew. And today it goes all the way to 12th grade. But she started,
Wow.
yeah, but
That
she
is
started that.
amazing. I mean, talk about a figured out story right there in itself. It's just like, okay, well, let me see. I can't see my kids. So what I'll do is I'll just start a school so then that
Yeah.
way I can get like, I mean, that's pretty impressive. I mean, that's thinking outside the box all.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, honestly, this is really, in honor to her. Whenever I share this story, it's a blessing for me to tell her story and how strong she is. I'm just the guy that loved her so much that I just wanted to give her as much as I could. And I guess that was part of my, I was asked to tell me two things when I had to figure things out. So I had to figure that out. And I always tell people there's only three things I've ever done right in my life, which was my marriage to Tina, Kaipo, my oldest, and Kobe, my second born. So there's only three things I've ever done, Brock. So the rest is up to God, and it's kind of led me through what I've had to do. And the next part of my figuring out is now. This is a new season for me, and I'm figuring things out now. You know?
Man, that is, you shared a couple things here. I think our children or your significant, whoever it is that is that love that you have. One in first and foremost, let me go back to Michelle's comment and Chad's comment of legacy of what took place with that school in creating that school. Like that's legacy. That's something that you leave behind. I think many of us, when you get to a certain point of your life, you want to figure out what is it that you're going to leave behind. And there's certain parts of my life where I'm just like, right now, the only thing I'm leaving behind are bills. And I don't want that to happen to my kids.
Yeah.
And so that motivates me. That inspires me to get my tail up a little bit earlier, to do things a little bit differently. Because when I was figuring out my whole taxes, that was one of the things I was like, shit, I'm gonna leave $150,000 worth of IRS debt because I made some bonehead decisions. Like
Yeah.
you got to make better decisions, Brock. Because that's who's gonna like somehow, some way, the government's gonna get their money, and it's your fault. And so the legacy, you have a choice. So you can either leave a positive legacy or a negative legacy. I think the worst thing is no legacy. like nothing. Like, well, I'm not too sure.
Mhm.
And so as you were figuring out today and as you go through this proud parenting and you see your kids and you see them blossoming, like what is it truly though that you're trying to figure out today? What is it that's like gets you up in the morning? What gets you going? What gets you showing up on the show? What gets you finishing the Friday strong? Like what are some of the things that you're trying to figure out to grow personally or business?
That's a great question, Brock. And what comes to mind is honestly one thing, and I just want my boys to be proud of me.
Hmm.
Um, I want to be able to build something and help them with whatever they do. I'm just here to help them at this point. I mean, they're starting. I remember getting married, and when I was 25 when I got married, and she was 21. And I remember, starting those early days as a young husband and family with a kid on the way. I know what that means and how hard that is, but it's exciting, but it's challenging. So I had to, we were in the Philippines when we got married, but you know, um, when Kaipo turned, in 98, when Kaipo turned 3, I relocated everybody to Guam for better opportunities. But I had to go ahead because we didn't have much in the Philippines. So I went to Guam. I landed in Guam with $200 in my pocket. First thing I bought
Wow.
was a pair of Converse. That's all. I needed some shoes, and so I got started in the radio industry. Just built myself up. I went into an advertising company, then ended up with a corporate job.
And you
Um,
started with $200.
yeah, $200. That was July of 98. Yeah. And then 3 months later, I got a job. I was making, minimum, was able to save up and borrow a little bit of money to get my wife and my son a ticket to come follow me to Guam. And the rest is history. 14 years later, I was making six figures. I was getting, over $100,000 and getting bonuses I was with Atkins Kroll, Toyota, and Lexus. I was a director of marketing, and it was a good gig, 14 years later, but it was all for the family. It was all for her and my sons. And when Kobe was born in Guam. And so that was like just God's hand through it all, leading this family for his purpose and through her. And you talk about legacy. So now it's, it's just helping that's you know, I'm a coffee farmer too, because when I got stuck in the Philippines, you had to keep moving. I couldn't go back to Guam. And so I had to keep moving. So I started a coffee farm. Now I'm a coffee farmer. So I got
Mhm.
2,500 Robusta trees in the farm in Ponte Vedra Capiz. And I named the farm Auntie Tina's farm. So that's going to continue her legacy.
Wow.
Um, and the main purpose for that is because we as a family, my two sons and I, we wanted to, remember her, and keep her story going. And so Auntie Tina's farm is born out of that for the simple fact that she always appreciated God's reminder that he's going to provide for the earth, for mankind through simple things like fruits. So in Guam, our neighbor had these blackberry trees, and she would be such a frail person, like walking around, but you'd find her in their yard picking these little blueberries, from the trees. And that was kind of some of the last images I had of her, picking fruits. And so that's what we did in the Philippines, is to kind of honor that. And on the mural on the side of the building is this hand giving of God, and she's receiving these fruits. And to relate to that, to coffee, well, coffee is a fruit. And I love coffee. I'm not a farmer. You put a plant in front of me, it'll die in 3 days. So I don't know what I'm doing. I really don't. But I'm smart enough to surround myself with people who do. And so the farm is named after her. And to this day, it's a yeah, it's an operable farm. I got a small farm team there that's providing, harvest. Now it's harvest season, so they're very busy harvesting, providing the coffee for our locals there. a local market there. And a couple months ago, I decided to bring the coffee here too, or the brand at least. I can't bring the coffee, but I brought the brand here, and I opened it up to all of Asia, specialty coffee from Asia, China, Myanmar, Philippines, and things like that.
Wow, guys, we just put that link in the chat if you want his coffee. We just put that into the chat. I'm gonna put you on the spot that you don't even know what question I'm about to ask you here. So
Yeah.
um I'm gonna take a I'm gonna go on the ledge here to ask you this question. Have you ever asked your boys if they're proud of you?
Uh, no, that's just kind of my question I ask myself, you know. I mean, it's almost like two lives, you know, you raise them the best you could, and they turn into the men you're super proud of. And that's the only reward I can ever ask for as a father, just to be, I just want them to be proud of me, you know. So the things that I do, the steps that I take, man, it's just I don't know if I've ever verbalized that to them or asked that, but that's just me, you know, that's just inside of me.
No, and I could feel it through here, and I wrote that down. I was like, I wonder if he's ever asked them, because sometimes we don't ask because we're scared to hear their answer, and sometimes we don't ask because we want to continue to use that as our drive and as our motivation. And I feel that if you did ask them, you'd be blessed with abundance on their response. And I will encourage you or challenge you in 2025 to maybe visit that, um, because you're a phenomenal human being. You really just truly going through that's not easy stuff. That, like, when you have emotion, and I think emotion is probably one of the hardest things to overcome, because it stays with you non kind of like depression. Like, it doesn't leave. It is with you in the car, at dinner, in the grocery store. Like, that emotion doesn't disappear. And so Jada, I'm just very blessed and thankful that you brought Sammy into our family, into our life here, to share. And unfortunately, we're running out of time. Um, what I would like to do is, one is Jay, make sure we put everything out there that Sammy, is there anything that you want us to make sure that we have in the links there that you want to put out there for us on our with the site here?
Um, I guess maybe a shameless plug if I could. We
Yeah,
have
that's
yeah, we have an event. It's called Conquer Greenville. As a matter of fact, I'm wearing our colors today. Conquer Greenville. It's an OCR outdoor course race on July 19th at Hopkins Farm, historic Hopkins Farm in Simpsonville. Actually, that's Jada's hometown right there. But it's kind of like Spartan race meets family. So it's very much a community driven event. And it's the founder is Kazendo, who's out of Guam. So he's a very close friend of mine. He takes this Conquer race and goes from Guam, Saipan, Tinian, Rota, Palau, all these places out there. And I said, well, Greenville really doesn't have this. And he said, you know what? Do it out there. And that's what we're doing. So it's wellness through play. Put down your phones, grab your kids, and have fun for that day. And we're actually launching it today. You'll see all promos. It'll hit social media today, but that's my shameless plug for today.
No, we want to put that out there. That's part of the show, is to be able to share how we can get in touch with you again. Jada, if you can capture him and put him in the car with you and Chad and Paul on the way up here for our event next Saturday, try to, please, because I'd love to meet Sammy in person.
Yeah, I
Um,
briefly put a little bug in his ear.
I love it. I love it.
You mentioned that, yeah.
So, guys, we put his stuff all in the chat. If you want to reach out to Sammy, if you want to get his coffee, if you want to dig more about him, he is on social media. We will put all the posts out here and on here. Sammy, we're a little bit over, but I'm gonna ask my
Sorry.
famous question.
Yeah.
What is the one thing you like to leave us with today? What is the one thing, if you were to take to give our audience, that you want us to leave with?
you're not changing it, you're choosing it. I mean, you've heard that before, but that's what comes to mind because if there's anything that you want in life, you just have to decide if you want to stay the same or change something to make things something different, you know? For me, it's a constant change for me. So that's what probably I'd leave that comes to mind at this point.
I love it, man. I love it. Guys, put some love in the chat. Put a 5 in the chat. Put a 5 in the chat. Give him a virtual high five. Sammy, I really appreciate you being on here. I know the family here on our show. For those that'll watch the recording, reach out to him, touch him, put out a 5 in the chat that if you got something from his story, something that resonated with you, because it is all about sharing. And Sammy, I appreciate you digging into that time period with you and your wife and your kids. And I'm just very blessed to have you on here. And Jada, thank you very much for bringing Sammy onto the show.
Yes, sir.
Guys, I appreciate everybody on here. Have a phenomenal weekend. If you're in the snow belt, if you got some snow coming your way and you got kids, spend some time with them. Enjoy yourselves. Be careful if you're shoveling. Be careful if you're shoveling snow. If you do feel weak, you need to go see Amy Kane. Amy Kane will get you tough. Train with Kane. And I better see some people on next Saturday. Next Saturday, guys, it is going to be great. We added a reception dinner. We have a reception dinner with all the speakers and the VIP. For those of you who want to come have dinner with us, you certainly can. Take a look at it. Jay, Rika, make sure you put it in the chat, our link next Saturday. Love to have you. A lot of our guests, a lot of our speakers are going to be on here. Guys, stay safe. Have a phenomenal weekend. I'll be back Monday morning at 8:15 with Mondays with Maxwell. I'm your host coming back at you. God bless you all. Have a phenomenal weekend. See ya.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sammy.
Thank you.